We all go through different chapters in our lives, some stranger than others. Welcome to Strange Chapters, where we bring you true stories of the strange, the macabre, the paranormal, and the supernatural. So sit back, relax, and let's get to this week's featured author and their stories. Hey everybody, welcome back to Strange Chapters. I am your host and narrator, Eric Freeman Sims. Thank you for joining us today. On this edition, we bring you part 2 of our 3-part series featuring stories from author H.J. Tidy's book, Ghost Stories, a collection of the world's most haunted locations and paranormal encounters. So if you're ready for part 2, sit back, relax, and let's get strange. The true story behind the Myrtles Plantation. Some scary locations are even more frightening because of the truth that lies beneath the myth. Amid all the rumors and stories that shroud a location in mystery, there's a real story to be told. Whether this is a tale of murder, torture, or strange disappearance, the history is what adds to the intrigue of the supernatural and to the intrigue of what is really going on. One tale that has a wild and exciting historical narrative is that of the Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. Blanketed by the dark history of slavery in America, the Myrtles Plantation was home to at least 10 murders that occurred in the main house. Now, it is regarded as one of the most haunted plantations in the United States. Paranormal investigators have examined the plantation, and the owners run many ghost tours throughout the property. Hundreds of people have witnessed strange, unexplainable happenings at the estate, and some even claim to have photographed ghosts and spirits residing on the premises. This begs the question, is the Myrtles Plantation really haunted, or are people just drawn to the stories that surround it? Additionally, we can consider what really happened at the plantation in its time as an operational estate, and which ghosts supposedly stuck around. Join me as we look into the stories of this interesting yet spooky location. A horrifying past. There's no denying that American history is marred by centuries of slavery and mistreatment of its African American population. There's no way to brush past this when looking at the history of an Operation Plantation, and I do not intend to pretend that this did not happen. Instead, I seek to embrace the stories of those who suffered on the property and respect the past as best I can. The history of the location begins long before the plantation was built. The story goes that this estate was constructed on a Tunica tribal burial ground. In the supernatural world, any property built on a burial ground is cursed, so if a single murder happened at this plantation site, there was likely already paranormal activity afoot. The plantation was built by General David Bradford in 1796, where he lived alone, in exile as penance for his role in the Pennsylvania Whiskey Rebellion, a protest against high taxes on whiskey, which President Washington had to send troops in to break up. Due to his dalliance, Bradford was mostly known around town as Whiskey Dave. Once he was pardoned, his wife, Elizabeth, and their children moved to join him on the property. The property was built in the style of the traditional Louisiana plantation, with a clapboard exterior and a large veranda stretching across the entire house. Inside, the house has 28 rooms over 2 floors and lavish carvings and ornaments, both inside and out. It has an enormous chandelier hanging in one of the halls, and 2 parlors feature marble mantels. There's no denying the property was built to be marveled by all those who saw it. To this day, it is still a stunning structure with many of the features of the original house preserved. The plantation was later sold in 1817 to Elizabeth and David's daughter, Sarah, and her husband, Clark Woodruff. Whilst the Bradford family was in control of the plantation, it was called Laurel Grove, though the name changed to Myrtles Plantation when Ruffin Gray Sterling and his wife, Mary Catherine Cobb, later took ownership. They renamed the property after the crepe myrtle that grew there. The property was sold and bought many times over its history and saw several families come and go. As the house switched owners, the enslaved people on the property were sold as part of the property. When Clark and Sarah took control, they expanded the holdings of the plantation and planted about 650 acres of indigo and cotton. The couple had 3 children, Cornelia Africa Gale, James, and Mary Octavia. Clark allegedly had an affair with an enslaved person named Chloe, with whom he had a tumultuous history. Legend says that Chloe became paranoid that Clark would end their relationship, so she began eavesdropping on his conversations. When she was caught, Clark saw to it that her ear was cut off, and she subsequently wore a scarf to hide what happened to her. There is also a rumor that claims Chloe once poisoned a cake for the birthday celebration of one of Clark and Sarah's children. Clark did not eat the cake, but his wife and children did, and subsequently died. The other slaves, perhaps afraid of their owner would punish them also, dragged Chloe from her room and hanged her from a nearby tree. An alternative story to the history of the Woodruff family is that they passed away from yellow fever. This one is more widely believed by historians, though fans of the paranormal tend to lean toward the story of vengeful poisoning. Official historical records show one recorded murder on the property. The victim's name was William Drew Winter, an attorney who lived on the property from 1865 until 1871. He was shot, seemingly at random, by a stranger on the front porch and staggered into the home. He tried to climb up the stairs, calling for help, though he succumbed to his injuries on the 17th step. Despite records not showing any further murders, there's a long-standing assumption that many more violent deaths occurred on the plantation. Perhaps these deaths were not registered or the owners of the property falsified documentation. There's no way of knowing exactly what happened, which has caused speculation about what could have happened at the plantation. The history of this old property is rich and troubled. Many families passed through the doors, and many people took their final breaths there. With many violent and difficult deaths occurring there, it's no wonder that the stories of hauntings and the paranormal have taken over the history of the plantation. So what is haunting the Myrtles plantation? How many ghosts roam the halls of the property? And what have people seen when visiting? Hauntings and encounters. The Myrtles plantation is allegedly so haunted that people travel from all over the world for the chance to run into a ghost. It's almost impossible to name every single spirit that has been sighted at the plantation. People have been visiting for years, and many have attempted to capture what they've witnessed on camera. Though, as always, capturing photographic or filmed evidence of the supernatural is difficult. The plantation has been host to many paranormal researchers and ghost hunters in the last few decades. This includes a team from the Travel Channel who investigated the story of the poisoned children and attempted to capture their ghost on camera. With all these eyewitnesses who swear they saw something supernatural, one may wonder, who roams the plantation? Where are they spotted? What sightings have there been? The ghost of William Drew Winter. As mentioned before, the only recorded murder on the plantation was that of William Drew Winter, whose death was exceedingly violent. It's no surprise that his ghost is said to have remained on the property, and visitors often claim to see him. Legend has it that his footsteps can still be heard on the stairs where he passed away. Many, hearing voices on the stairs, think someone is climbing up behind them, but there's nobody there. Some claim the noise sounds like someone thumping and staggering up the stairs, which is in line with how Winter spent his last moments alive. The sound is even more prevalent at night, and sometimes people have heard someone begging for assistance in this exact location. A few visitors have even claimed to see William on the stairs. Though this seems to be a frightening experience, he is said to appear as a dying man, after all. Like with any ghost story, there's an element of mythology that changes the narrative over time. Some claim that William Winter never actually made it to the stairs of the home, rather dying right away on the porch. This means that any noises heard on the stairs are either figments of people's imaginations, or perhaps another spirit altogether. Regardless of what you believe, a glimpse of William's ghost would undoubtedly be a sight to see. He is one of the most sought-after spirits, and people spend time near the staircase just hoping that he'll make an appearance. The Legend of Chloe. The story of Chloe poisoning the Woodruff family is the most famous and well-known tale that comes from the Myrtles plantation. She supposedly distilled extract from oleanders that grew nearby and baked them into a cake for the children. While she did not manage to kill her punisher and former lover, Clark Woodruff, she murdered his 2 daughters and his wife. She was hanged for her crime sometime around 1823. Some say she is now doomed to haunt the property for the rest of eternity. Some people have told stories of Chloe taking their items. Most notably, she'll steal an earring from a pair that belongs to a woman staying at the plantation. She only needs one due to her ear being cut off. Some see Chloe at night in the bedrooms, visiting as they sleep. Those who have been lucky enough to wake up and see her have found her to be calm and not frightening at all. Despite her murderous history when she was alive, she seems to be an incredibly peaceful ghost who is just curious about the living. Those who have encountered her say she has traditional southern manners and just wants to see who is inhabiting the plantation. Supposedly, a photographer was even able to catch Chloe on camera. This man was surveying the property for insurance purposes, taking photos as part of his standard procedure. He swears he did not see anybody before taking a particular picture and was shocked to find that a person had appeared in the photo afterward. Many believe the story because the surveyor was not visiting the property seeking a supernatural encounter and seemed very shocked by what they saw. The plantation now sells a very popular postcard with this image on the front. It is blurry, but there's a chance that someone was standing in the field, captured in the supernatural photo. People are sure that this woman once lived on the property, even if it's not Chloe herself, because those who have spotted her say she bears an uncanny resemblance to a painting that hangs in the plantation. Some claim to have clearly seen her staring through windows, her features plainly visible to the naked eye. The Woman in the Green Turban. There is an unnamed ghost that has supposedly appeared to a few guests and has given them quite a fright. This is the ghost of an African-American woman in a green turban and a long dress. While ghosts are sleeping in a downstairs bedroom, They have woken to see this woman standing silently at the foot of their bed. She is frequently seen holding a candlestick, which appears so real it emits a strong glow and even heat from the flame. She has reportedly lifted mosquito nets from the beds to peer in at the occupants. Some guests have said she even reached out to touch them, though she has never been reported as being violent or hurting anyone. Some have attempted to figure out who this woman is, attributing her presence to either an enslaved woman or a governess who lived on the property and who was likely mistreated. According to her myth, and similar to the story of Chloe, she had her ears cut off, which is why she is seen wearing a turban. Those who have had a better look at the apparition have even noticed a scar near her hairline. The story says she had a child removed from her care, and this is who she is looking for when wandering the bedrooms of the lower floor. She has been seen peering into the faces of sleeping guests, presumably still looking for her lost child. Due to the similarities with her injuries and appearance, some believe that this could actually be Chloe. Most people familiar with the ghost are adamant that these are two different entities. However, there's no way to know for sure. It is entirely possible that two different women could have experienced the same punishment in their time at the plantation. The years of slavery were incredibly cruel, and slave owners would use the same kinds of mutilations and retributions to hurt their slaves. Visitors have become fascinated with seeing this woman, especially because she is friendly. People spent hours in the lower bedrooms hoping that she will come and see them, though she is selective with whom she visits. What the residents have experienced. There have been several residents and long-term employees of the plantation who have experienced many encounters with the supernatural. They all have fascinating stories of the occurrences they experienced. Some are frightened, while others have peaceful interactions, but all were left fascinated by what they experienced at the Myrtles Plantation. Frances Kermeen Myers. Frances Kermeen Myers and her husband James moved to the Myrtles Plantation in the 1970s and operated a bed and breakfast from the property. The couple went through so many haunting experiences while living there that Frances even wrote a book called Myrtles Plantation, The True Story of America's Most Haunted House. During their year there, they claimed to have experienced nonstop hauntings and paranormal experiences, describing the typical signs of a haunted house: unexplained footsteps, random voices when there was nobody in the room, lingering perfume that belonged to nobody in the house, and strange noises that echoed through the house at all hours of the night. Sometimes they would even hear a baby crying when no infants were staying at the plantation. Notably, Frances had a few encounters with the lady in the green turban. She found her at the foot of her bed and even felt her touch a few times. Frances also reported the presence of Chloe and William Winter at the plantation. She told stories in podcasts and interviews the experiences of her bed and breakfast guests while staying at the plantation, including reports of beds floating above the ground and items flying across the rooms. I had thousands of reports from guests in my 10 years there, from hearing things, seeing things, the bed lifting and floating around the room, to being chased down the stairs with a broom. The Moss family. After nearly a decade living on the property, the Kermeen Meyer family had enough of the constant hauntings and sold the property to John and Tita Moss, the current owners of the plantation. When they first moved into the property, they knew it had a history of hauntings, but weren't sure that they believed it to be true. They thought it could be a marketing scheme made up to drum up visitor numbers. For the first 17 years, the couple and their two sons lived on the top floor of the mansion, while the bottom continued as a bed and breakfast for traveling guests. Tita says that within 2 weeks, the family was already experiencing high levels of supernatural events. She would hear her husband's voice in the house when he wasn't on the property, and sometimes they heard the voice of a childlike friend. One paranormal expert explained that sometimes spirits have the power to mimic voices that make the living comfortable, to show they're not dangerous. The most startling event to happen to the Moss family came in 1993 and involved Morgan Moss, their son, who was only 10.5 months old at the time. Morgan was asleep in an antique bed with iron railings, while Tita was in the office finalizing details for the property's restaurant. She was alone when she heard a raspy voice say, "Check your baby." At first, she assumed her mind was playing tricks on her and ignored it, going back to work. When it happened again, she decided it was worth checking out. When she arrived in the bedroom, she saw her son was missing from his crib. She ran through the house screaming and looking for him, only to find him making his way toward the edge of the pond outside. She reached him and held him in her arms, terrified and wondering what could have happened to him if she hadn't gone to check. When I held him, a warm blanket enveloped the two of us, so real that I could feel the fabric and warmth. Then the same voice said to me, "You need not worry. Your family will never be harmed here." From that day, Tita looked at the ghost and the spirits as the family's guardians. The Moss family claims to have often seen ghosts of playing children on the premises, including seeing Chloe roaming between the buildings on the plantation. Tita says she captured a picture of Chloe. While there is no solid evidence of Chloe ever existing, this apparition is proof enough for many that she lived on the property. Hester Eby. Hester Eby has been the director of tourism at the plantation for over 30 years and has reported countless supernatural sightings. Just like Tita, she believes the ghosts are harmless. An incident she says she will never forget is the first time she saw the ghost of a little girl at the property. Two guests arrived and asked to purchase 2 tickets to gain entrance, and Hester asked if they also wanted a ticket for their daughter. They laughed and told her they never had children, but she saw them walking up the drive with a little girl. She remembered all the details of the child and was even going to comment to the couple about how cute the child was. Hester says of the child, she had long blonde hair and was dressed in an antique white dress, skipping behind the mother. Hester was surprised the girl had simply disappeared, and once she allowed the guest admission into the property, she walked back outside to look for her. The little girl appeared again and said hello, then giggled and disappeared again. It was like she was playing a game with Hester. Hester also claims to have seen uniformed soldiers standing at the foot of the main staircase that could be ghosts from the Civil War. She says all her interactions with the ghosts have been lovely. She's enjoyed being around the spirits and has never had any issues. Hester mentioned they can be a bit cheeky and misbehave at times, but she says that just adds to the joys of working at the plantation. Other paranormal sightings. Other than the name Ghosts at the Myrtles Plantation, a myriad of additional paranormal sightings and activities have been reported by many. Hester Ebby isn't the only person who has seen soldiers around the house. During the Civil War, Union soldiers came to the plantation and attempted to loot the property. They were unsuccessful as Confederate soldiers were alerted of their presence and came to shoot 3 of them dead. Years later, a maid attempted to clean the blood, which had stained the floors in the hall, but was unable to get it clean. It was like it was stuck there permanently. Now, people believe they witnessed these soldiers lying in this exact spot on the first floor in a pool of their own blood. There are also often sightings of 2 little blonde girls peeking through different windows at the plantation. Some assume these apparitions are the 2 Woodruff girls who died there. Finally, there are the classic signs of a haunted house. There are often strange orbs photographed, and people see things moving with no explanation. A mirror in the hallway reportedly shows faces of the dead from time to time. No matter how many times it is cleaned, there is no getting rid of the supernatural history of the plantation. Are any of these stories real? There are so many sightings and sounds that point toward the property being haunted that people visit hoping to witness the paranormal. However, as with any of these haunted locations, skeptics are sure nothing is happening. Many of the reasons non-believers have doubts are because no ghost stories have been proven true by concrete evidence. For example, there's no reason to believe that an enslaved person called Chloe ever existed or lived at the house. Sure, the plantation has a horrific history as part of the slave trade, and people there were owned like property, but there is no historical documentation that shows a woman with this name ever lived there. It is also entirely possible that Clark Woodruff had an affair with an enslaved person. However, there is no reason to believe that this person poisoned his children and his wife. In fact, looking at this time in history, it is more likely that they died from scarlet fever. Skeptics believe the story was started to spook visitors at the plantation and grew into a broader legend that couldn't be stopped. Now, it is passed down from visitor to visitor, and people are desperate to see the supposed ghost of the murderous Chloe. Another debunked story is that of the Union soldiers. Surviving members of the Woodruff family say that this is absolutely not true and that there were no visits from soldiers during the Civil War. The story of 3 men being shot is just a fantasy made up to add to the mystery of the property. The only documented and confirmed death is that of William Drew Winter. However, skeptics do not believe that this ghost still roams the halls of the plantation. They believe that owners of the property have either seen shadows that have led them to believe there is someone there, and that the sounds of footsteps are purely the creaks of an old house. At the end of the day, without experiencing the paranormal themselves, it is improbable that a skeptical person will change their mind. Even if they do witness something supernatural, they'll likely explain it away with logic and reason. Ghost or something else. It is up to you to decide whether you believe the stories of the Myrtles Plantation ghost. If you are a skeptic, perhaps you are not convinced by the numerous eyewitness accounts, or perhaps there is nothing that can show you that any of this is true. Whatever your opinion, you cannot deny that these stories are fascinating. Nowadays, the plantation has embraced its history and the supernatural stories. The website openly promotes its reputation as one of the most haunted places in America and encourages ghost hunters and believers alike. They run tours and guests visit from all over, hoping to run into a spirit. The bed and breakfast is also still operational, and many rooms are named after the previous owners. If you think about the stories told, you can likely perceive why this is such a highly toured location. The opportunity to be visited by Chloe or the lady in the green turban is exciting. Hearing the footsteps of William Winter would be quite a surprising experience, and seeing any of the children who roam the plantation would be thrilling. No matter where you stand on the supernatural, the story and history that comes from the Myrtles Plantation are unforgettable. Now it's up to you to decide what is real and what is fake. All right, I hope you enjoyed part 2 of our 3-part series from H.J. Tidy's book, Ghost Stories, a collection of the world's most haunted locations and paranormal encounters. And you can find H.J. Tidy's books on Amazon, Kindle, BarnesandNoble.com, and wherever fine books are sold. And those links are in the show notes. So grab yourself a copy and stick around for part 3 about the Sally House. And until then, stay safe out there and stay strange.